Good morning, and I'd like to thank Bloomberg very much for hosting me this morning. This morning, I want to talk about the future of Europe. But first, let us remember the past. 70 years ago, Europe was being torn apart by its second catastrophic conflict in a generation. A war which saw the streets of European cities strewn with rubble, the skies of London lit by flames night after night, and millions dead across the world in the battle for peace and liberty. As we remember their sacrifice, so we should also remember how the shift in Europe from war to sustained peace came about. It didn't happen like a change in the weather. It happened because of determined work over generations, a commitment to friendship, and a resolve never to revisit that dark past. A commitment epitomised by the Elysee Treaty signed 50 years ago this week. After the Berlin Wall came down, I visited that city, and I will never forget it. The abandoned checkpoints, the sense of excitement about the future, the knowledge that a great continent was coming together. Healing those wounds of our history is the central story of the European Union. What Churchill described as the twin marauders of war and tyranny have almost entirely been banished from our continent. Today, hundreds of millions dwell in freedom from the Baltic to the Adriatic, from the western approaches to the Aegean. And while we must never take this for granted, the first purpose of the European Union, to secure peace, has been achieved. And we should pay tribute to all those in the European Union, alongside NATO, who made that happen. But today, the overriding, the main purpose of the European Union is different. Not to win peace, but to secure prosperity. The challenges come not from within this continent, but from outside it, from the surging economies of the East and the South. Now, of course, a growing world economy benefits us all, but we should be in no doubt that a new global race of nations is underway today. A race for the wealth and for the jobs of the future. The map of global influence is changing before our eyes. And these changes are already being felt by the entrepreneur in the Netherlands, the worker in Germany, the family in Britain. So I want to speak to you today with urgency and frankness about the European Union and how it must change, both to deliver prosperity and to retain the support of its peoples. But first I want to set out the spirit in which I approach these issues. Now, I know that the United Kingdom is sometimes seen as an argumentative and rather strong-minded member of the family of European nations. And it is true that our geography has shaped our psychology. We have the character of an island nation. We are independent, forthright, passionate in defence of our sovereignty. We can no more change this British sensibility than we can drain the English Channel. And because of this sensibility, we come to the European Union with a frame of mind that is more practical than emotional. For us, the European Union is the means to an end. Prosperity, stability, the anchor of freedom and democracy both within Europe and beyond her shores, not an end in itself. We insistently ask, how? Why? To what end? But this doesn't make us somehow un-European. The fact is that ours is not just an island story, it is also a continental story. For all our connections with the rest of the world, of which we are mightily proud, we have always been a European power, and we always will be. From Caesar's legions to the Napoleonic Wars, from the Reformation, the Enlightenment, and the Industrial Revolution to the defeat of Nazism, we have helped to write European history, and Europe has helped to write ours. Over the years, Britain has made her own unique contribution to Europe. We have provided a haven to those fleeing tyranny and persecution. And in Europe's darkest hour, we help to keep the flame of liberty alight. Across the continent, in silent cemeteries, lie the hundreds of thousands of British servicemen who gave their lives for Europe's freedom. In more recent decades, we played our part in tearing down the Iron Curtain and championing the entry into the EU for those countries that lost so many of their years to communism. And contained in this history is the crucial point about Britain, about our national character, about our attitude to Europe. Britain is characterised not just by its independence, but above all, by its openness. We've always been a country that reaches out, that turns its face to the world, that leads the charge in the fight for free trade and against protectionism. This is Britain today, as it's always been. Independent, yes, but open too. I never want us to pull up the drawbridge and retreat from the world. I am not a British isolationist, but I do want a better deal for Britain. But not just a better deal for Britain, I want a better deal for Europe too. So I speak as a British Prime Minister with a positive vision for the future of the European Union. A future in which Britain wants and should want to play a committed and active part. Now, some might then ask, why raise fundamental questions about the future of Europe when Europe is already in the midst of a deep crisis? Why raise questions about Britain's role when support in Britain is already so thin? Now, there are always voices that say don't raise the difficult questions.